The stars are falling out, my dreams are fading now, fading now. I've been keeping my eyes wide open. I've been keeping my eyes wide open. Oh, love is a symphony all around me, running through me. Oh, love is a melody underneath me, running to me.
Earlier this year, my family and I sought to dwell on the Exodus, on the Passover, on just the plagues and how the Lord took a people of 2 million to 4 million, whatever they were. It was a mighty throng. And God carried them out, old and young, with their animals and their stuff. A miracle, amazing. And a lot of times we can forget that God cares about community so much that He waits to do things for individuals within the community, because He's got to get the whole thing where He wants it. All the babies that He wants to be born at that particular time need to be born. Obviously, God knows the end from the beginning, so there's things going on in the whole corpus of the body of Christ and in redemptive history and in the economy of God and in the way He deals with men. He deals with us not just individually for the sake of an individual. There's always a redemptive plan for that one individual to accomplish God's purposes to save a people. Let me say that again. When God works in one individual, He has a long-term redemptive plan to help His people, God's people, the ones He came to save, the people of God, who will believe on the name of Yahweh or on the name of His Son, Yeshua, who will follow His commandments. Supernaturally, they will do what is right against the tide. They will go against the natural inclinations of our heart, which are very, very powerful. And in the case of Moses, you know, he probably would have been a pretty good guy 20 years into the wilderness experience with being a shepherd, seeing the burning bush halfway through the process, as it were. But God chose 40 years, a completed generation of time, to do things in Egypt for the Israelites, to prepare Pharaoh and the land. Let's just call it fattening up Pharaoh, fattening up Egypt. And He's doing things in Moses to prepare him to deal with what I'm going to deal with today, which is leading the people of God. Now remember, Moses' congregation was sheep for 40 years. Sheep. I mean, we don't know how many people he actually had interaction with on the backside of the desert in the wilderness. But we know, even though he was in isolation, God was at work on the inside of him to prepare him for the difficulty of leading a stubborn and rebellious people. In Exodus chapter 15, after they sing the Song of Moses, this beautiful poem of how God destroyed Pharaoh's army and buried it at the bottom of the sea, that God is their Redeemer and rock. In verse 22 of Exodus 15, then Moses led Israel. God led Israel, but He used this man called Moses, Moshe, to take His people to a specific place to do a specific job. It wasn't random. Oftentimes we feel that God's dealings with us are random, and it feels like that. Why would this happen? Why would this car accident happen? You know, why would this person all of a sudden get angry with me and start to come against me in the church or at my job or in my family or in my neighborhood? Why is my next door neighbor being such a crazy man? Why is he going out of his way to come against me? Well, we don't understand that we are many times being led of the Lord into difficult situations, into the thicket, into a straightened place, into the narrow way of learning how to follow God. And this is what God wanted to do after this incredible miracle, after He displays His power, His glory at the Red Sea. It says that Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, the place of triumph, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. Before I move on, I want to remind you, when Jesus was baptized, signifying an incredible outpouring, the Lord speaks from heaven, "This is my beloved Son." He testifies to all of creation and to John the Baptist that this is his Son, and he is well pleased with him. An amazing announcement. Can you imagine if you had that? How good would you feel when your audible voice booming out of the glorious heights of heaven were to speak over you specifically, and you were to just feel the warmth of God's love? What did the Lord do with Jesus after that? The Spirit which was in Jesus, which was endowed upon Jesus, represented in a dove that fluttered down and rested upon him, led him, drove him into the wilderness for 40 days of torment with wild beasts, evil spirits, and in the midst of all that intense opposition, Jesus was not going to drink water or eat any food. No company of a human. He was isolated. And that was the purpose of the Spirit of God after the outpour declaration that Jesus was God's beloved Son. Here, Israel is being seen by Pharaoh, who's now dead, his army. He's being seen by Moses in a powerful way as his leader. Moses could easily, in the natural man, start to feel like there's nothing we can't do. There's no obstacle that we can't get past, because look what God has just done. A miracle on top of miracles. No one ever saw the Red Sea parting. No one ever saw Pharaoh chasing him into the Red Sea, and then the waters falling on top of their head. And then the dancing and the singing and the thanksgiving that flowed out of that. They were on a high of highs. But it says here that they were led into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. God leads them from the pinnacle of an awesome victory to a place of desolation where there is no visible signs of life, really, and no water. In verse 23 it says, "And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah." The Lord led his people into a situation where their eyes were telling them this is finally water, refreshment. But when they went to taste the water, it was bitter. Here God is doing something in a people, not just in Moses, the individual. Because we're going to see here quite quickly that Moses is going to be tested. And he's going to be tested again and again. And this was his training, 40 years in the desert, no water, a wilderness, being a shepherd. Now it's coming into play as he leads this throng of Egyptian-minded, Egypt-loving, materialistic, idol-worshiping Israelites into the wilderness to train them to be the people of God. So they see water, it's bitter. They're like, why would God show me something that's refreshing and it to turn out to be bitter? A great group of people that, you walk in the door and they're like, "Hey, Jonathan, I'm so glad you came here. You're an amazing guy. I've had, people say, you're exactly what we were looking for. You can help this church and build this church." And all of a sudden, over a period of weeks or months, even years, things turn ugly. This has happened in my life several times. People can love you, and then people can all of a sudden not like you. And you can sit there and scratch your head and go, what the world did I do? I don't even know what I did wrong. But it's just the nature of things that people want to reach out to something and they can say, well, you can help us.